Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Josh Scorcher. We got a new countdown list for you all. We got the top 10 introductory games. So yeah, these are basically games that help you really, ease your way into like popular franchises. Pokemon, Mario, Sonic, Persona. Yeah, basically these are the recommended games to start with. So let's see where to start with these franchises. For me, for Mario, probably Odyssey, but Super Mario World's a good one too, but might as well see for the beginning. Let's see what Josh thinks are the best introductory games. So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let me know if you played any of these games. Let's go! Sorry. This is fun. Here we go.
In this day and age, more and more people are getting into gaming, but introducing someone to it, let alone a more out there kind of franchise, it can be a daunting task. After all, how do you introduce someone to your favorite obscure RPG series without sounding like...
Now let me explain the rules. That's basically the basics.
That's where the introductory games come in. These are the games in the franchise that seem to attract newcomers more than previous entries. And today, we're going to be ranking the ones that we feel do the best at doing so. How? Well, there are a lot of different ways. How difficult is the franchise to get into versus how much does the game make it easier? How much story context does it require? So on and so forth. Without further ado, let's begin.
Let's see. First up, number 10. Which Pokemon are you going to do?
So we're actually going to be starting out with a game that I have first-hand knowledge of it introducing me to a franchise. I did need a lot more hands, though.
Hey, Monster Hunter! I haven't talked about you that much before, right? I may have had a rocky start with you recently, but I kind of blame another game for that.
Shall we fight them?
No, let's run.
Huh?
And I am sorry for that. I had a bad taste in my mouth at the time. Luckily, after a bit more time with said game and some help from devoted fans and colleagues, I was finally able to enjoy the majesty that is Monster Hunter Rise. With the quality of life improvements that were introduced in Monster Hunter World, Mon had become way more accessible than ever before, especially with it coming out on more consoles than Nintendo's latest handheld. And boy, howdy did it, with the game becoming Capcom's best-selling game of all time with 18.6 million units sold. However, it was very different from the previous Monster Hunter games, completely changing its progression system from before. Plus, it was hard. If you didn't get a handle on the mechanics and battle system by the time you got to Toby Kadachi or Anjarath, you were in for a bad time. Rise, on the other hand, had a much easier early game, giving multiple monsters for players to take on right away, and used the Village Hub quest system that was used prior to World. This way, players could enjoy the game from both the perspective of a world player and a 4th generation prior player. And with village quests, you don't need to worry about having each quest be a giant struggle from the get-go, which can be a turnoff for some players. Of course, I say this knowing the big issue with the early game, considering I had to deal with it myself. This game has more tutorials than Xenoblade Chronicles 2 if it went to Pokemon Sun and Moon's trainer school. It is overwhelming how much info and text the game dumps on you, and unless you have someone who knows the game well enough to parse through it. Again, thank you so much for your patience, viewers. I love and appreciate you lots and lots. You may have a tough time trying to absorb it all. Heaven knows I did. Though from what I hear, World didn't have as many tutorials, but it also threw into the lion's den a lot more. So, leave it up to player choice. That's the main reason why Rise is only number 10. No matter what you start with, you will have to learn a lot of mechanics, figure out what weapon you main, sword and shield for life, and then learn to love the grind once you get mid-game. A large learning curve, but a dang satisfying one once it clicks.
Again, everyone's got different weapons. But moving on to number 9. Who do you got?
It's pretty debatable
Kirby.
which Kirby game is the best one to start with. These games
where are
are
we going?
similar yet different enough that any one of them could be someone's first and give them a good impression of Kirby games in general. So yeah, call it nostalgia bias, but I'm going with Nightmare in Dreamland. As the remake of Kirby's Adventure, Nightmare in Dreamland maintains
This was
the
actually my
core
first game
aspects of
too,
the
to be
original
honest.
while chewing it up just enough that it makes the experience feel fresh. Better visuals, music, and in some aspects a bit more challenging as well, since the screen is smaller than Adventure, so the obstacles are bigger and harder to dodge. Even has its own selection of copy abilities, which the original brought into the
high jump.
series. Some of these, like High Jump, Laser, and Ball, remain mostly unique to this game, with only a few succeeding games adapting them. It's a solid game overall, and it serves a really good starting point for anyone who's still new to Kirby. While you could say later Kirby games are more grand and spectacular, I'd say this old classic aged pretty well. Not much else to say, really. It's Kirby. Easy to love, easy to pick up, and has remained that way to this day. But if these games are too easy for you, you can always start with Mass Attack.
Please don't. They gave me Kirby bucket. Okay, number 8.
Mamma mia, it's a Mario. Yeah, considering the series is the
which one?
crowning jewel of gaming franchises with tons and tons of games across varying genres, it's gonna be very tricky to pick which game is the best one to start with. So, yeah, I'm gonna take some liberties with this one. The 2D platformers, honestly, I feel could go either way. Most of them are easy enough to get into for what they are, and you wouldn't miss much for playing one before the other. The 3D platformers, while I'd argue Mario 64 is a good one to start with, that feels like a better genre introduction than anything.
So I'm thinking
which
for 3D,
I
say Odyssey,
So how about
and
we
for
look
the
at
first
something a little
2D,
more exclusive? The RPGs.
Oh, the original Paper Mario, okay.
Mario does RPGs so well that it's become one of the most popular subgenres in gaming. And out of all of them, Paper Mario captures the essence of Mario's universe the best, while being an incredible beginner's experience all the way. The game has all the features you'd expect from a Mario RPG. Action commands, party members, individual level ups for your health points, special meter, and badge slots. The game simplifies a lot of the damage calculation, which makes battles easier to strategize, but there's still enough complexity with all the various elements and badges to keep the battles exciting. And on top of all that, this game really feels like Mario taken into RPG form. It takes the standard Mario versus Bowser conflict and dramatizes it just enough to make it stand out. Not to mention, it's one of the earliest instances of seeing the various species across the Mushroom Kingdom be fleshed out. The Goombas, Koopas, and Boos alike all have their own culture, as well as good and bad people alike. It makes the seemingly simple world of Mario feel so much more alive and nuanced, which I really appreciate looking back on it, especially given how other Paper Mario games surprisingly branch away from this. Don't get me wrong, Legend of the Seven Stars, Thousand Year Door, and Super have great worlds too, but they seem to do more of their own thing most of the time. This game, on the other hand, feels like a Mario RPG. It's simple and fun enough that it makes an excellent introduction for what's to come with these games. And even if Thousand Year Door is highly regarded as the ultimate Paper Mario, and I'm not surprised the pacing's a lot faster in that, there's no shame in giving its older brother the attention and respect it deserves.
I'll be real. That's a fair point. I think if you want to expand the world of Mario, go with Paper Mario. But in my opinion, if you're going for 2Ds, definitely start with, say, Super Mario World, because that's where I started. And for 3D Mario, I would say the 3D, or at least the Super Mario 64, because at least there, it may be tank controls, but you definitely get a bigger grasp of the, intricacies, or like kinks of the 3D platforming of Mario, at least in my eyes. But yeah, like I said, for the 3 Mario games to start with you, Super Mario World, Super Mario 64, and Paper Mario. Go with them, you'll be set to go. Anyway, moving along. Number 7. I don't know why I did this, sorry.
Mega Man, one of gaming's most iconic characters.
Still have trouble
First
with that.
debuting in 1987, he's amassed an army of games. So many,
And
he has
different
several
versions.
continuities worth of games to pick from. So with a franchise
I'll
so
give you
huge,
5.
what do you start with? While the classic series was the first and most simplistic, it's also insanely difficult and hasn't aged well in certain aspects. Zero has the whole sequel series plus difficulty thing. Battle Network and Star Force, while fantastic RPGs, aren't really platformers. Same thing with Legends, which is more of an action adventure. Give us Legends 3, Capcom, you're doing so well! That leaves us with X, the very first sequel series. While it does continue the story of the classic games, you don't really need too much context to figure out what's going on. There's far more emphasis on the story with actual cutscenes and dialogue, meaning it's a bit more complex than Dr. Wowie is trying to take over the world again. Gameplay-wise, X is far more fast-paced than its predecessor. The ability to jump out of slides and wall kick mean that movement and combat flow much more smoothly, and there's a great feeling of momentum through the levels. At the time, X was seen as a welcome breath of fresh air for evolving the series. Today, it's still a great introduction.
Or you could be like the guy on my writing team that started with Zero. That'll totally work.
Oh. Good to know. I gotta start with Battle Network, to be honest, so still trying to branch out.
Tim and I have spent hours trying to figure out what the best introductory Zelda game is. And after many debates, crying, arguments, crying, Danganronpa-style school trials, and more crying, I think we finally figured out what it is.
So,
Wand of Gamelon. I mean, sure, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? It's the game where you play as Zelda. Perfect! And for no reason, I will now duck.
Damn it, Mr. Bugger.
Okay, I'll behave.
Courier.
So, what actually is the best Zelda game to start with? Well, considering how different the games can feel, it really comes down to what really nails the exploration and dungeon progression of the series. Excluding Majora, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and most of the handheld ones, we kept going back and forth on Ocarina, Twilight, and Wind Waker.
My mother told me to pick the very best one, and you are it!
That's you, Wind Waker.
Wind Waker has been seen as the Zelda underdog for a while now, with people not giving it the time of day for the longest time. Nowadays, it's seen as one of the best Zelda games with a really great story and fantastic world across the whole series. With a focus on exploration on your boat, you get to experience a vast world that feels alive if sparse. You get to experience a Link that grows and develops from a lazy kid to a great hero. You get great dungeon designs and puzzles that ease you into the experience.
I kind of started with Ocarina, to be
partner trying to cram every tutorial down your throat. Even Twilight Princess is guilty of that. Now I say all these things, but yes, there's a big but. You're all thinking it, and I'm just gonna say it. While the early and mid game is fantastic, the late game has the Triforce hunting, which can be a massive turnoff to players. Plus, while the open ocean is expansive, it can also feel pretty empty at times. It's not super early before you get the teleportation song. This can lead to long stretches where you're sailing and not doing much else. There's also the fact that throwing you into a rather brutal stealth mission at the start so soon after giving you your sword was a real dick move. The Wii U HD remaster fixed some of these issues, but it's stuck on the Wii U. And despite a bunch of leaks saying it's coming to the Switch, you haven't seen squat yet. Because of the issues in the late game, I do feel a little weird putting it higher than this. However, don't think for a second that it disqualifies this game from being the best entry point for the series. After all, despite the misgivings, it's not like other Zelda games make you backtrack a lot through the second half of the game.
Fair, kind of a thing. Also, I don't remember that moment from SpongeBob.
Among many things, the Shin Megami Tensei series is known for two big things, being absolutely horrifying and absolutely brutal. To say nothing of the BS strategies the bosses can throw at you. So how do you get into something this unforgiving? Well, many fans recommend starting with the Persona sub-series. The gameplay is a lot more familiar to JRPG players, and the stories are more straightforward. For the most part. But that begs the question even further. Which one of those do you start with? Of the ones that are available on the most platforms, fans tend to disagree. Persona 3 has the which is the best version debate, while 5 has the whole go to sleep thing. Well, why not Persona 4? The story is easily the most normal of the series, focusing on a simple small-town murder mystery. Gameplay-wise, 4 was generally easier. Physical attacks were no longer divided into multiple elements, so you didn't need to worry about resistances as much. The main character dying isn't as much of a death sentence thanks to party members now being able to sacrifice themselves in battle. Golden improved things even further with plenty more quality of life changes and new story additions. The new shuffle time mechanics mean you can pretty much turn any persona into a death machine. They also made the unfair early bosses way less annoying. But that said, there's still one big problem with Persona 4. It takes forever to start.
Fair. I actually did start with Persona 4 again.
Oh goody, Fire Emblem. Well, this is an easy pick. It's obviously Awakening.
Hey!
Sorry, got a little trigger happy there. But I must retort.
It's gonna be one of those days, isn't it?
Yep.
The public outlook on Fire Emblem has heavily shifted based
Legend
on
of Zelda.
what a lot of people consider to be the best direction for the series. All because people were afraid of the notion that playing a strategy RPG where your units can die permanently. While that isn't something to sneeze at for XCOM players, us normies can't handle that all that well. Well, yeah, while the whole point of this is to play a game like an adequate battle simulator, most people don't exactly like throwing away units they spend a lot of time training and caring for.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but that's dismissing the amount of good stuff that exists in these games. Amazing sprite visuals, interesting characters, a variety of epic stories to be engrossed by, and solid SRPG mechanics that blends experience points and rock paper scissors weapon elements together. Considering how often people give the old games flack for being too hard, they can always start with Sacred Stones. For a classic FE game, it's very player friendly since you have many options to train weaker units as well as a few pre-promotes as a safe cushion. Anyone who knows the true power of Seth and Dussel knows exactly what I'm talking about. On top of that, this is the game that serves as a basis for the prevalent mechanics we see in modern FE, including grindable monsters and branching class promotions. So it has just as much content and freedom to offer as a lot of the modern games.
Alright, I can see where you're coming from, but let's not pretend Awakening didn't do well on its own either, even excluding optional permadeath. Between also having an incredible visual style and presentation, the game does an exceptional job of fleshing out its characters. It's all thanks to a stronger support system that opens up a variety of different conversations each character could have with the other, rather than only for a select few. Not only is this good for character development, but it also means just about any unit can support and provide stat bonuses to the other. Let's be honest, old Fire Emblem games have very unintuitive support mechanics. Even if gameplay is a non-issue, some people can be turned off by the lack of feasible support and interaction between characters, which makes the mechanic not feel very relevant, especially if you don't plan on using the same support units together. Being able to get to know the characters in Awakening almost immediately helps keep players interested to care for the units they recruit along the way.
That is a fair point. Players who are looking for a welcoming experience filled with openly fleshed out characters will definitely be more gravitated towards Awakening, but Sacred Stones shouldn't be left overshadowed. The gameplay is still very welcoming, coupled with great writing, and unlike Awakening, the villains are actually good. It works as a great middle point for both new and old Fire Emblems alike, so if you just want a comfortable start, Awakening is still a great pick. But if you really want to get into all of Fire Emblem, then Sacred Stones is the go-to introduction.
Well, thank you so very much for your opinion, Count. You have enriched this segment with your diversity of thought. Now get out of my house!
You're like, I don't find it be enlightened, nope. Probably would have said that. So, yeah, actually, again, a lot of these I actually did start with. You'd be surprised, man. And so far, we haven't reached the Pokemon games yet. Now, for that one, I think what people are going to say is Heart Gold Soul Silver, at least I think. I can't say for sure, but I can definitely see it going that way. You know, you get 2 regions for the price of 1. You get Pokemon for both Kanto and Johto. And I think Hoenn and Sinnoh, I don't know. Been a while. Plus, it's been known as one of the greater games in this franchise, so why not? I wonder what else. I think Metroid's definitely in there. Which, ironically for me, I did just start with, Dread. I still get to try out that Metroid Prime remaster, you know? I mean, hey, gotta give it a try somehow, right? Anyway, time for the final 3. Let's go!
And now for the curveball on this list. Final Fantasy is often regarded as one of the most accessible JRPG franchises of all time. So why is a Final Fantasy game on this list?
Which
Two
franchise?
reasons. Firstly, for as much as every game in the franchise is called Final Fantasy, each game can be wildly different from the next. Final Fantasy Tactics plays nothing like Final Fantasy III, which plays nothing like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which in turn plays nothing like Final Fantasy XII. There are over 50 games with the Final Fantasy brand, and the enormity and diversity of the franchise can be a little more than daunting. Second, how many Final Fantasy games have you actually completed? It's no secret that most JRPGs are massive time sinks, and more than a few have reputations for being massive grind fests. It's not uncommon for someone to be playing a JRPG in their spare time, something new comes along or something else happens in their real life, and they just kind of forget to come back and finish it.
Sometimes I forget.
Keeping these two factors in mind, which Final Fantasy game is the most easily accessible, of reasonable length, and does a great job of representing the franchise as a whole? Look no further than the Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster. With 4's Pixel Remaster only just having come out on Steam, it's very easily accessible to the modern gamer, so that box is checked. The game clocks in at a reasonable 22 hours, compared to 7's 36 or 12's gargantuan 61. So that's another box checked. But what about representing the franchise as a whole? Well, as far as that's concerned, if you ask someone what the essence of Final Fantasy is, you'll get as many different answers as the people you ask. Again, Final Fantasy houses over 50 games, and most of their settings and themes are wildly different from each other. So nailing down one definitive game and saying, this is Final Fantasy, is a bit of a fool's errand. However, I'd argue 4, with its colorful cast of characters, crazy plot twists, amazing soundtrack, classic turn-based gameplay, and a quest to save the world from an ancient evil, is one of the stronger contenders for that position. Thus, we award Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster with number 3 on this list.
I might have to check that out, actually. Check it out. Number 2.
So our runner-up entry is a number 2 game. You think I planned this on purpose?
Maybe. I'll never tell.
Maybe.
So, you want to get into the Resident Evil franchise, but you're not sure where to start. And you don't feel ready to for certain...
Ding dong, you're not wrong.
Where can one truly get the full classic horror game experience that the franchise has to offer? Well, to me, personally, the best way to step into this franchise has to be the Resident Evil 2 remake. Set 2 months after the original game, or its remake, RE2 follows a rookie cop and a college student as they try to escape Raccoon City during the outbreak. But along the way, you've got to survive hordes of zombies and your fellow man, just like all frickin' zombie apocalypse stories. Already, you may ask, why the second game? Shouldn't we start with the first RE game? Oh, you absolutely could. The original Resident Evil game is one of the biggest pioneers of the survival horror genre. With its tense atmosphere, it practically gave the genre a leg to stand on. However, the beauty of the sequel is while it does take place after the original, the story is pretty self-contained. You don't feel like you're missing anything if you haven't played the first chapter. Plus, in all honesty, the sequel took what made the first game great and improved it. It kept the nerve-wracking tone and added different paths in the story between our two playable characters. An action on one route can affect the other in some way, making both branches in the narrative feel tightly connected. The first game didn't have this kind of variety, so yeah, more bang for your buck with the sequel. As for why the remake, well.
Hear the music.
X gon' give it to you. Wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock, open up the door, it's real.
That alone makes the RE2 remake way more worth it. Mr. X is much more of a threat. Actually, all enemies in the remake are much more terrifying. True. They're much faster and smarter, and you dread catching one of them in your path. Couple that with the enhanced graphics and environment, and the experience feels much more real to you. You truly feel like you're fighting for your life. If you want a standalone title that's rich in scares and atmosphere and gives you a first-hand experience of the horrors the Resident Evil franchise is filled to the brim with, the RE2 remake is definitely a great first stop on your journey. Just pray you make it out alive.
Wait, honorable mentions?
Ace Attorney Dual Destinies adds many QL improvements that make the investigation segments way more fun and accessible. Sonic Generations, great gameplay intro, but a lot of the fan service is lost on newcomers. Tales of Symphonia, good but lacking in certain modern day sensibilities. Kingdom Hearts 2, two magical words, skippable cutscenes. Fallout 4, good intro, but maybe a bit too simplified. Dynasty Warriors 7, best story of the Warriors games and leads to the quality of life seen in 8 Forward. The Secret of Monkey Island, no better place to start than the beginning, and this really set the standard for Guybrush's zany misadventures. Castlevania 4 / Symphony of the Night.
Symphony of the Night. Both. Yeah, both is good.
Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Hey, there's a reason it's still the best Call of Duty, and we got a remaster and a remake. Don't play that one.
Remaster. Got it. Thank you, sir. Number 1. Go.
There are few games that have the honor to have an entire genre named after them. For all that people talk about how good Metroid is on a game-to-game basis, Metroid can be surprisingly hard to get into. I mean, when the first game doesn't even have an in-game map, when the game is all about exploration and finding all the little secrets, it might intimidate some people. The Metroid games also have a surprising amount of lore that the unprepared can easily get swept away in. Not helping matters is the fact that the Metroid Prime games are just as, if not more, popular than the 2D games, leaving potential fans confused as to whether they should start with one or the other. After much consideration, and what I'm told was a painstaking amount of scientific study, me and my crack team have decided on the one game we can call the most Metroid. Metroid Zero Mission.
Really? Zero Mission?
Why have we chosen this one? Allow me to explain. Zero Mission is a remake of the original Metroid, so no lore you need to catch up on. There's also an in-game map, so you're not forced to look one up online or make it yourself with your old paper and pencil. Even further, this game was released almost 20 years after the original Metroid, which gave them a chance to make a ton of improvements, both to the story and the game. It runs pretty smoothly on the GBA hardware. Not only that, for a Metroid game, it's pretty easy. I say this as a series veteran who has played all the others before I tried Zero Mission. The threat level is on the lower side. And yeah, the Metroid franchise is one with a storied and slightly complicated history. To some, that history is a brick wall barring entry. To others, the series' reputation for difficulty is off-putting. Zero Mission handles both those problems very well, with a story that's easily grasped and well-refined gameplay design that's accessible to new players. No matter your reason for hesitating on picking up the Metroid games, I'll give Zero Mission a chance. I hope you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'm Josh Scorcher, and you never forget your first game!
First game! First game! Mine's out of the gutter.
Cut!
I don't think that helps. Okay. So, Zero Mission takes the top 1. Which, again, considering Metroid, fair enough. And this is coming from a guy who started with the latest, Dread. And, oh boy. Not sure if I would have had it a lot better if I started with Zero Mission, but... Like I said, I did not get into Metroid for a while. Like I said, my first one was Dread. So, fair enough. You think they're going to make a Dread sequel or something? Or a game that follows it? I don't know. I mean, we did recently get the remaster for Prime, which I really got to try out. Anyway, there you go. The introductory games. Let me know if you actually played any of these and if they were your first game. Let me know. And until next time, like Scott for more, let me know your favorite introductory game, and I'll see you around. Adios.